What if you have several photos you want to incorporate into one painting? That's what we're going to do today, so let's get started. All right, let's look at some paintings by real painters. This is Matisse, and the point of this is to look at some painters from the past and look at how they manipulated uh, their environment. And you can see that he's taken this table and he's twisted it. You know, he's not that interested, he's all interested in design rather than in getting proportions or getting the perspective exactly correct. And he's using pattern a lot here. I hope to use pattern in the future too. But this sort of expands your mind into the idea of what still life could be. The next one is by Monet. And, you know, just two circular forms on a circular table. Couldn't be more simple than that, but boy, that knife is really effective, isn't it? And such beautiful painting. And now, for some reason, in looking at historical still life, fish are used a lot. Someone will have to enlighten me as to why. But what's really interesting here is how he has taken the negative space and the positive space and brought that strong diagonal going on. This is Cezanne. You know, I mean, what can you say about Cezanne? I mean, he was all about structure, boy. He knew how to build a painting. Just like he built that, how many times did he paint that mountain that he painted? Like a million trillion times. And again he's doing that sort of forced perspective thing on the table here. And I find this freeing because sometimes I try to imagine if I was this painter and I painted this, I would be all upset with myself. You know, oh, one apple is too big, or, you know, the table is incorrect there. You know, we get all caught up in the details, but the overall construction really works. And this is a painting by Manet. Again, fish and eels. Fish and eels were big back in the day, but I won't be painting any of those. So we're going to leave the sublime, because those are the great, great, great painters, and then go to my efforts, my puny little efforts that are going on. And so what I'm trying to do is take from a variety of photographs and implement them into one still life. And in order to do that, ahead of time, I'm kind of thinking about verticals and horizontals. I'm thinking verticals, horizontals, circles, and squares. That's kind of what's going on in my head all the time. And if I'm able to break up this big piece of real estate, this big piece of paper, and up into those different shapes and get them to balance, then I'll have a pretty good, I think I'll have a pretty good piece. So you can see the tulip photograph on the left that I took and decided that I wanted to create a strong diagonal that goes on the horizontal to compete with that. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't start with what I'm going to do. What I do first is get a big essential form down and then decide from there what I'm going to do next. And that's when things start to get tricky. That's when I feel like I've painted myself a little bit into a corner, because now, because every decision that you make in painting affects the next decision you make in painting. And so before you know it, you're kind of overwhelmed with decisions. And I have found that over time, I think I'll get better at doing this. Right now it's new, and so I'm working the kinks out. But I think it's a worthy endeavor, so I'm going to continue to do it. Let's take a look at another one. Um, you can see this is influenced like from some of the tables that you saw from Matisse, for example. So this is not about getting things exact, but it is about designing, making sure that the design becomes balanced and that your eye flows from one place to another, and that the forms sort of complement each other overall. That's what I'm working on. And I am finding that each day that I do it, it becomes a little bit easier to do, and hope that as I continue to scale up, that I'll be able to continue to feel like I'm getting somewhere. That's all I really want to do, is get somewhere in my own brain. But these are happy paintings and I'm enjoying them. But let's take a look at when things really go wrong, because as much as the old masters show us that you can play with things, here's an example which really gets it wrong. I love that bun cake. Oh, I love that bun cake. But I put the flower behind it, and you can see the scale is way off. See how big that flower is? That would be really the size of a gigantic sunflower, and it's a peony, so it's wrong. And I just, my mind can't wrap around it being okay. So this is a painting that is not, that doesn't succeed. The other problem is, even though perspective doesn't have to be perfect, it's so far off on the cupcakes on the right because you're looking at them sideways, whereas on the bun cake you're sort of looking up and down. That I can't live with it. So that did not succeed, but it was a great learning exercise. I learned more from the failures than I do from the successes, but boy, it was hard to sacrifice that bun cake. I loved that bun cake. Um, the second time I painted it, it wasn't as successful. So here we go, building a painting again, starting with the tulips, then the apples, and I put in a photograph of Tom and Fig Newton on the boardwalk at the bog. And now I had the rest of the real estate to break up. And what I am using is I am holding up origami paper to guide me so that I can get some squares in there, because a lot of the forms that I do are circular and I feel like they need squares to balance them out. Again, this is all experimentation, but I think it's worthy. This is the first one that I did, and you can see that I have a sketch on the upper right. I already knew kind of how I wanted the composition to go. I've abandoned that. I don't know if it's wise to abandon that or not, but I found that I got too locked in. And I think the whole idea here, for me, I'm not telling anybody else how to paint. There are a million ways to paint. There's no right way. And the only thing I'm trying to do here is expand what I used to do, which is paint one thing on a piece of paper, or maybe two things. Maybe it would have been flowers and a plate, and to expand it into a larger format, because I think that'll help me grow as a painter. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color. I'll let you know more as I discover more about all of this, and I am discovering every day. And please join my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.